Hey everybody, welcome to the live stream. Glad you're here. I know we've got a few people already waiting for us. Let me close my window so I don't get some sort of echo. But anyway, glad you're here. I'm Craig, of course, and with me is Jared Newman from Tech Hive, but I know him from his incredibly amazing weekly newsletter called Cord Cutter Weekly. Makes sense, comes out every week. So Jared, glad to have you with us today. How you doing?
I'm good, Craig. Thanks for having me on.
Good. So a few weeks ago, or was it, I guess just last Friday, was the Roku newsletter. Is that right? Or was it 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, no, that's right. Not today, the week before.
I don't know if you knew this, but time has no meaning now.
Yeah, I figured that out.
So anyway, this Roku topic it really caught my eye because I'm well known as a Roku fanboy. It's not that I think it's the best device out there, but I think it's probably been the best for the most people, the most widely usable and affordable. So anyway, I've always loved Roku, but the last couple of months have been trying times for Roku fans like myself. And why don't you walk me through, just give me the elevator pitch of what this thing is about and why maybe we should stop standing Roku so much.
Kind of crazy also that it's been 2 months since HBO Max launched and has not been available on Roku. So yeah, I guess to back up, HBO Max launched at the end of May. And they launched on all the major streaming platforms except for Amazon Fire TV and Roku. And that was kind of an interesting change because traditionally we think of Roku having the broadest app support. They don't really get into these content fights that some of the other streaming platforms have gotten into, particularly Amazon. Now we see, they're in the thick of it. And now Peacock launched earlier this month and same situation. And so, I, as a reviewer, have always sort of defaulted to Roku as, the best streaming option for most people because broad app selection, easy to use, all those things that you said. And now it's sort of like we're preparing for this reality where they're going to get into these content fights and maybe have some issues just because of how large they are as a platform, and they're more willing to push some of these other big media companies around, and that's going to cause some issues like we're seeing now.
Yeah, so it makes sense to me that Amazon gets a little bit pissy with Google sometimes, oh no, we don't want our stuff, or you can't have our stuff on your platform, and because they're competing. Roku has always seemed to be above that fray. Mm-hmm. And now it's, how do I put this? Like with any brand, you can build a brand in whatever way you want. And a lot of times, so let's just take Roku's case. They built their brand around, look at how much streaming stuff you can get. They were one of the first devices out there. And so they made every app available, and you can get it for free. This device is really cheap. Look at what you can do with it. And that's how they built their customer base, is essentially look how simple, easy, quick, free, or cheap it is to use this device. And now that they've built that massive consumer or this user base, right? What do they take up? 40% of the streaming device market, something like that. It's just, It's ridiculous. And now that they've got that built up, how do they transition into making some real money out of that? Not that they haven't been profitable, they haven't been successful, but now they want to. They've built a robotic golden goose, and now they want to have it lay some eggs. And so how do we make that transition? And that's what we're seeing right now, right?
Yeah, and don't forget, they were, like you said, they were kind of the first one to really do an app store for streaming devices. That they were around. Apple TV was around, in those early days, but they had this sort of restricted platform for Netflix and a couple other partners. Yeah. And Roku was really the first one out there, kind of rolling out the red carpet for content providers, trying to get them on board. And they really put forth this message like, hey, we're Switzerland. We're not, we're not pushing any particular streaming platform. We don't have our own streaming service. We're not going to get into these conflicts. And so, people saw that they had the broadest app selection. And yeah, like you said, what we're seeing now is, just going by some of the reports I'm seeing in terms of like the disputes they're having, some of it is strictly about straight up like what's the share of ad inventory. In other words, what portion of advertising does Roku get to control and monetize itself? And you can squabble back and forth about that. And I guess I'm a little more sympathetic to that side of things. Roku's argument in terms of like, hey, we're a big valuable platform. Like you said, 40%ish of the streaming market in the United States, and so we have the right to charge a little more because our platform is worth it. But then you see these things like they're trying to finagle these sort of extra things that to me are not exactly neutral. For example, they have the Roku Channel, and within the Roku Channel, they have premium subscriptions. So some of the reporting is suggesting that Roku has offered HBO as a premium subscription within the Roku Channel. And just like Amazon, they don't want to give that up. They want to continue to sell HBO subscriptions through the Roku Channel, get their portion of the subscription revenue, and maybe continue to offer HBO Max content to Roku customers, maybe through the HBO Max app if that's necessary. I think that's, but they still want to, be able to have that subscription store on their own. And on top of that, there's reporting around them trying to get free content that they can put inside the Roku Channel, because the Roku Channel is also this big growing source of ad-supported video, and Roku is an ad-supported business. And so it's very important for them to sort of prop up the Roku Channel as this central hub of free movies and TV shows. And so, this argument that Roku is a neutral party, which they've said in their earnings statements, they kind of put that messaging out to the press. And it's not really as true as it used to be because the Roku Channel is so strategically important to them.
So help me understand, and somebody who's in my boat, who doesn't know all of the ins and outs, the behind the scenes stuff, why is it that the Roku Channel, which, like you said, lets you go and sign up for HBO or whatever other premium channels through that app, so you can, collect everything in one place. It's super convenient. Mm-hmm. Why couldn't they just pull the HBO Max, the app, that whole platform in there? Why do they have to separate HBO and HBO Max for that?
So, this is where, some of the, I don't know if I'd call it blame. Maybe we can call it blame. Sure, let's call it blame. Some of the blame falls on, the content providers like HBO. They don't want to have all of their content aggregated into somebody else's app, right? They want you to go into HBO Max and, use their app, and they want to control the experience, control, the subscription revenue and all that. So it is partly on them. The thing you have to keep in perspective is, if you're Netflix or your Hulu or your Disney Plus, a lot of these other big streaming services, they're not in the Roku Channel anyway. So this idea that like you're going to have this one app that aggregates everything and you never go out to other apps, it's kind of unrealistic. So if you're thinking about how do you put the users first, I'm not sure for Roku, like, insisting on that kind of stuff is a great strategy. Like when I look at Apple TV, Apple made a deal with HBO, and their deal was we're going to stop selling HBO subscriptions because Apple has a subscription store marketplace within Apple TV, just like Roku and just like Amazon. But they said, okay, we'll stop doing that. You can sell your subscriptions through HBO Max, but one of the things you're going to do is you're going to integrate HBO Max with our Apple TV app. So this gets really annoying with marketing names and all that. But on Apple TV, there's an app called Apple TV, and it's separate from the service called Apple TV Plus. And but the idea, yeah. So I know. So but the idea is that this is one place where you can kind of see all the things that you're watching, get recommendations on things to watch. You still go out to HBO Max when you select a program from them, but this is sort of a central hub. And so they kind of let go of that idea of, we're going to control the subscription itself, but in exchange, they got something better, which is this unified menu. So Netflix doesn't participate in that, but pretty much every other major content provider does. And so I think that's really valuable for people who use streaming video. And I see Roku like kind of failing to provide anything similar to that. And that's frustrating to me.
It makes let me throw this statement out and have you react. Roku seems like they're playing the game from about 2 or 3 years ago, where, like you said, they're trying to aggregate everything into a single app, and that's not happening. That's not a thing that is. It will never be a capital T thing going forward. What might be a thing going forward would be the device hub. So, like the Apple TV. It's okay. Yes, the Apple TV app is an app, but really it's just the Apple TV interface essentially. So they're doing that where they're pulling all these apps into one place on a device instead of trying to get you to go into a single app. When you have all the other ones scattered around the interface that you could choose, like you're not going to choose the one and then that's the central hub. It's the whole device that's the central hub. It's the same thing with the Tivo Stream 4K. Have you had a chance to use that yet?
Yeah. In fact, I've got one right here.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised with my experience on the Tivo Stream 4K, and I've used it fairly often since I got it. But anyway, it's a similar thing where instead of having one app, it's just like Apple TV. Yeah, it's an app, but it's really just the interface for the device that pulls all this stuff together. And I feel like that's the future, and Roku is playing in the past. And it's a weird game of catch up. That you see with sometimes these giant dominant companies in whatever industry, right?
Yeah. And I think there's, for one thing, I would say that, I don't want to completely disparage the Roku channel. Like, I think, it's valuable to have this ad-supported source of content on the platform.
Yeah.
And that's great. And, it's not that different from, like, say, what Pluto TV or Tubi are doing in terms of, like, bringing together ad-supported content. So, like, that's fine. But I think, it's so important for Roku to, like, have this thing as a source of revenue that it's kind of blinding them to other opportunities, like what Apple is doing. And so it's funny. There was talk maybe a year or two ago. I think it was Anthony Wood from Roku who had kind of said, like, you could imagine the Roku channel, like, eventually becoming the home screen for Roku devices. And that hasn't really happened. But you could kind of see them doing this sort of thing where, like, you have the Roku channel sort of as this hub, but you can still launch apps through it. The question is, like, would they really want to do the kind of aggregation that, Apple is doing with Apple TV? Like, if they're just linking out to Hulu content or they're linking out to Amazon Prime content, that's going to make their own Roku channel content a little less appealing if you're a Roku user. So they want to put this stuff that makes them money in your face. And that it kind of ties back to this idea of, like, neutrality. Like, Apple has their own streaming service and they're going to promote content from Apple TV Plus within that menu. But in a way, they're being more neutral than Roku is because they're, linking out to all this other content as well. They haven't really lost sight of, like, what the user wants. And, like, a little concern that Roku is increasingly focused on revenue and not seeing that, you will lose customers that way.
And it's an interesting problem if you think about the structure of a company like Roku versus Apple, where Apple has a widely diversified revenue stream. They've got their fingers in a lot of pies, however you want to put it. And so with the Apple TV, they don't necessarily, like, they can stand to lose a little bit on some deal with something on the Apple TV, because every time you buy an Apple TV 4K, first of all, it's $175 or whatever you paid for it. That's a lot more than the $30 you paid for your Roku Express. Mm-hmm. And so they're already making more money there, but really it's just about getting you into the ecosystem so that you stay hooked on your iPhone that's $1,400 and your iPad that you paid $900 for, and whatever else, right? Mm-hmm. So it's tough. Roku's in a really tough spot because they don't have that diverse revenue stream that some of these other companies, these competitor companies, the Amazons, Google, and Apple, whoever else, that they have. But on that note, you mentioned that there are rumblings of Roku-created content, right? So not just an app, not just a device, but they're going to get into the content creation game, similar to what Amazon is doing. Can you tell me any more of what you've heard about that? Or
no, I haven't heard anything beyond like what was reported in that one story I linked to. And to be fair, it could be just them sort of kicking the tires on things and may not go anywhere. I think Roku sort of denied that they were making any serious moves into that space, and it could just be due diligence. But it's I wouldn't rule anything out. To what you were saying before, we haven't really talked about Google and Android TV in this context, because Google hasn't had any of these issues with HBO Max or NBC, and they're kind of pursuing a similar strategy. Apple has their own strategy of kind of getting you into their ecosystem and selling their own services and hardware and all that. Whereas, Google is more that strategy of like, let's scale up an audience and then show them ads. And Android TV hasn't really had that resurgence, at least here in the United States. But I think, you might see some of that. And it's going to get really interesting. It was funny because, just yesterday there was that whole congressional hearing about antitrust and with all the big tech companies. And it's funny because I haven't seen Roku say anything about that. But, there is an argument maybe to be made that like a Google could go in and make these, more generous content deals with NBC or HBO and win market share and then pull the same tactics that Roku is pulling now. I don't think any of these companies are inherently like more, moral or what have you. But so there could be an argument that like Roku is one of these non-tech giants that's doing the best it can, and they're just going to get undercut by a company that is willing to burn more money on this effort. So I'm sympathetic to all that. Yeah. I just wish that Roku would sort of, as you were saying, like kind of catch up with the times and what people want in their streaming interfaces. I feel like there's a way to have both.
Sure. So let me, I'm going to kick it over to, there's a comment very early in the stream. I hope Cleopatra Jones is still here. Cleopatra Jones, which is a fantastic name, by the way. Just, there you go. Your name is amazing, if that is your real name. I'm new to Roku. I'm interested in knowing more before my 14-day return period is over. I love this question because it kind of just leads me right into, so is Roku still worth it? Or is the future elsewhere in the streaming device market? Because I'll tell you what, over the last month or two, especially after Peacock came out, but with HBO Max and then Peacock not being available on Roku, I have used my Apple TV 4K and my Tivo Stream 4K way more than my Roku. So I turn on my Roku TV and I've got to flip over to another input so I can use these other devices, and they're good devices. I love the Apple TV. It's just $175, and so that kind of puts it out of reach for some people. Luckily I work for a company that lets me review all these, so I get my hands on them. But anyway, so they're great devices, but they're, maybe sometimes a little more expensive. Then you've got the Peacock, which isn't that expensive, $50 right now. So I guess, sorry, long-winded way of asking this, but does the future still belong to Roku, or are they going to fade away? Let's do some wild
I don't think that like Roku is going anywhere. They still offer like a cost-effective and easy to use streaming platform. And I would hope that like these issues are temporary and that we're not going to see a lot of them. But I would also like to see some assurances from Roku that they're going to try to minimize these things. And so far, the attitude that I get from them is sort of like, we're big now, and like these companies are just going to have to deal with these things. And it makes me a little uncomfortable. I wish there was like another option I could sort of point to as an option where these things wouldn't happen. I mean, there's kind of Apple TV, but like you said, it's considerably more expensive. And at that point, you have to weigh like, all right, well, how much do I care about, Peacock in particular? Like none of these services are going to lose Netflix. Probably never going to lose Hulu, I'm guessing. So you have to weigh these things. Fire TV, they're having the same issues. There is sort of the angle of like now you can sideload some of these apps onto Fire TV. Most people, I assume, aren't going to do that.
Right.
Android TV, like there's nothing really. The Android TV still doesn't have Apple TV Plus, so that's one thing. They still have their own thing, and then there's no like great streaming device yet on Apple TV, comparable to a inexpensive Roku player, inexpensive Fire TV. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, if Apple released a $50 streaming device, some pared down version of the Apple TV, I just think they'd kill it. They would.
Yeah.
Scoop up a lot of market share. But
I could see them doing like a $99 streaming device.
Even that, yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, the thing with Apple TV, Apple, I feel like their software, like the TV OS, is just like geared towards running on high-end hardware.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like, even I have the 4K now. I used to have the fourth gen Apple TV. And before I got rid of it, like I was already even noticing then that like it's kind of janky, like things kind of get choppy and weird.
Yeah.
And so it's like, all right, well, they're already optimizing TV OS for like this newer, more expensive device. Whereas Roku, like everything they've done has been about enabling cheap hardware. And so what is Apple going to do? Like, are they going to like change their whole attitude? Is that ever going to change?
Right.
We'll see.
No, I mean, Apple, they'll always want to be seen as the Cadillac of tech, right? They don't want to slum it with the $50 devices. But if speaking of which, you said, the Roku builds their software around the cheap hardware, right? And that kind of leads me into one reason why I think I'm a little frustrated with Roku right now, but I might continue to love Roku going into the future, because as long as they don't do what you were saying earlier, where they, maybe make the Roku Channel the homepage for your Roku device, I think that would be a disaster. Because just anecdotally, and I bet there are a lot of people in the chat who could back me up, where my parents cut the cord and they went and got an Amazon Fire smart TV, put it in their kitchen. And then, like the next day, gave me a call and said, "How do I run this thing? What is this? How do I watch TV on this?" Yeah. And then I said, "Okay, well, first thing you do is get rid of that and get a Roku." So we took the TV back, get a Roku, and then boom. It was so much easier for them to see what they were getting on the interface. And anyway, so with the simplified software and what feels like, even if the company is a little bit less Switzerland, as you put it, they still feel very Switzerland when you log in and you just see a bunch of tiles. And it's not like every other row is Amazon content and you've got to like hunt around for your Netflix or whatever. Yeah. So I still think that Roku presents really well. Their interface is great. Their search is amazing. I love their search. But it's just these app wars are killing me.
Yeah, I guess the question is, can you have it both ways, right? Because on one hand, we feel like Roku's a little stuck in the past with their UI approach, but on the other hand, we look at Fire TV and it's sort of like this managed chaos. So what's the right balance? I don't know. I feel like if Roku were to really apply themselves to that problem, they could figure it out because they're so good at, keeping things simple and easy. Mm-hmm. They could do it in a way that is not overwhelming. And I don't know if it just doesn't seem like that's a strategic priority for them.
Yeah. Well, we'll give this just a few more minutes, Jared. I don't want to keep you too long, but I do want to throw it out to any of the viewers. If anybody has any questions, direct questions, or topics that you want us to address in the last few minutes here, throw them on the chat, and we'll see how many we can get to in the next 5 minutes or so. In the meantime, also in that chat, I'm going to throw the link one more time to Jared's weekly newsletter. It's called Cord Cutter Weekly. You can also here. Let me see if I can pull this up. Yes, I do want to share my screen. Believe it or not, All right, there we go. So Cord Cutter Confidential is your column over on Tech Hive.
Yes.
And I find both of these extremely helpful. So I know that our audience is very interested in streaming issues. And so I, as far as I'm concerned, you are a must subscribe. So I hope people go do that.
That's very nice of you to say, Craig. Thank you.
All right. So let's see. Tom McCann asks, what can I expect from my Roku Express in the ways of new channels? You got me. The only new channels that they need at this point are freaking HBO Max and Peacock. But,
yeah. It's funny. It's, the old days of Roku, it was sort of like, it was this wilderness of like, what sort of weird channels can you find on here? And I don't know if we really have that anymore. Yeah.
How about, let's see.
Corporate, man. Panic
Dartmoor asks, what is your worst streaming device? Mine's Chromecast. That's not a bad choice.
That's a great question, by the way.
It is a great question. I'm going to reach all the way back into my vault. If you go back at the beginning of our channel, one of the first device reviews, I think it was the first device review I ever did, was Sling TV's Air TV player.
Ooh.
And it was not good. Now, as far as what people actually use, because I assume the Air TV player has 0.0001% market share. The Chromecast is not a bad choice. It's not a bad device, and I do recommend it to some people, but the fact that you can't get a remote on it just kills me. Just kills me.
I would say it's like a good second device. Like when you're holding your phone and you just want to like launch the thing that you're looking at on your phone.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice to have. And it's only like $20. Sometimes you can get it for like $20-25. For that, like, it's kind of nice, and if you have, I got all these Google Home speakers now, and so now I have my Chromecast in the living room like set up to sync with all the other home speakers as an audio source. So like I can play music and have it on my sound bar, and then all the other speakers like on the same floor or whatever. Yeah. So it's kind of cool for that.
Yeah, no, I use it for other stuff. Yeah,
and like Google Photos, like put Google Photos on the screen. So it's nice. My pick. Well, if we're picking things that people like actually know and care about, I always tell people to stay away from. And with all due respect to whoever just mentioned the Roku Express, don't buy the Roku Express.
Agreed.
Because like you shouldn't buy a device that doesn't have volume and power buttons on the remote. There's just no excuse for that to exist in 2020. Nobody should buy it. It's only like $5 or $10 more for like a significantly better experience. So I'm going to go with Roku Express.
That's a great choice. In my mind, Roku has 3 devices. They've got the Streaming Stick Plus, the Roku Ultra, and the Roku TVs. That's like, in my mind, that's all there is from Roku.
That's probably what it should be. The Roku Express Plus has and this is where it gets extremely Roku-y. Like the new Roku Express Plus is for HDMI output and has volume and power controls. And then there's the old Roku Express Plus, which is for composite video, tube TVs, and doesn't have those controls. But if you have a tube TV, that's your only option. So, and you can still kind of get both, I guess. I don't know. So,
I want to hear if anybody in the chat still has a tube TV. Let me know, because I might want to buy that from you. That'd be amazing. Okay, Aaron Johnson here. We'll take like 1 or 2 more. Aaron Johnson, is there any comparison between the Tivo Stream 4K and its previous device, the Tivo Edge, for both cable and antenna? My understanding is the Tivo Stream 4K is this is the new frontier for Tivo. They understand that their old devices, these DVRs, are becoming dinosaurs, and they need to jump into the future, right? Is that your impression of this?
Yeah, separate beasts, right? So the 4K is a streaming device exclusively, and the Edge is like a DVR for cable or antenna, and there's some streaming functionality on it, but it's like a different platform that's kind of been neglected as a streaming platform. Like there's new apps are not really coming onto the Tivo Edge. So you kind of need a separate streaming device if you want to watch, like I'm pretty sure Peacock and HBO Max are not on there. So, it's like you need a separate streaming device anyway. There's talk of they keep saying that they're gonna eventually like add Edge and Tivo DVR integration with the stream. So like if you had a Tivo Edge somewhere in your house and then you had the Tivo stream on a different TV, you'd be able to access your DVR and live TV through that.
Yeah.
They keep kind of not committing to a timeline, and I just don't think it's a huge priority for them. So I definitely wouldn't buy the TiVo Stream 4K with the expectation that will become available.
It feels a little bit weird to me that they launched without compatibility between their own devices, but then you just think about, they just wanted to make a good streamer, and I think all that other TiVo stuff is going to start fading into the background. It'll all be cloud DVR. Nobody's going to have a box in their house. We'll all just be dongling off the back of our TVs.
There's a lot of TiVo stuff that they've done that defies logic. That's all.
Starting with the design of their... I love the device, but it looks terrible. Thank goodness it's hidden behind the back of the TV.
The TiVo Stream?
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's adorable. With a little mini edge. It's cute.
Okay. Joel Tilson asks, will Roku get NFL Sunday Ticket? In my mind, that kind of depends on how this goes with HBO Max, because both of those are AT&T properties. And if they do ever get it, it won't be for a couple more years. There are contracts that have to expire, and eventually NFL Sunday Ticket, I think, will probably be a standalone streaming service, but who knows?
Yeah. The main thing is, well, so they have that. It's all a moot point now, but they have that Sunday Ticket like streaming option if you can't get satellite service, right? But it's like exorbitantly expensive, and I don't even know what platforms it's on. Like, is it even on Roku? I don't.
And you have to prove that you can't get satellite service, which very few people are going to be able to do, like, or you have to be a college
if
student.
You're in a dorm. Yeah, that's basically. But yeah, I mean, I think it was supposed to be 2021 where that gets renegotiated, and there was like an option to maybe push that up sooner. I don't know what the coronavirus does to those negotiations, but we are, it's like we're within that year of like maybe Sunday Ticket finally gets liberated from legacy TV and there becomes a streaming option.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about like how much it would cost or what.
We'll see how that goes. All right, last thing here. Justin asks if my TiVo stream has crashed yet. No, not yet. It's worked great.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm looking for one more. No. Well, we'll address Mr. Food Moon. It says Shield TV is the best streaming device. IMO. It's not
wrong. I mean, well,
it's somebody else earlier said that I have no use for Roku until I can sideload on it, and I'll tell you, like that comment and this comment, it's all about the power users, right? And if you're a power user, then maybe Roku isn't the one you want. But
I think that explains why, like, I don't like I've reviewed every Roku device that's come out in like the last 5 years, but I don't use them personally, and I think they're like not nerdy enough for me. I think that's why.
Totally, yeah.
And I have a Shield TV in my living room, so yeah. I guess if you wanted to make that case, I could go along with it.
Do you have the cigar, or do you have the?
No, I have the
Star Trek one.
It's the 2017 box. I had the 2015 Pro with like the built-in hard drive, and then I sold it on eBay and I bought the newer one without the hard drive, because I wanted the new controller. I guess I can't really explain my decisions, but I run a Plex server on it. It's pretty neat. Yeah,
it's good. It's a powerful device for something like that. So, all right, well, let's call it there. Thank you again, Jared, for coming on. And once again, I hope everybody will go check out. Let's pull it up here again. Go check out Cord Cutter Weekly. I'm going to throw that link in the chat one more time. So go sign up for the Cord Cutter Weekly newsletter. I highly, highly recommend it. On our channel, we do a lot of analysis and whatnot. But if you want just weekly news, here are the headlines from all these different devices and services, then it's fantastic. Can't recommend it enough. Oh, let's get rid of that comment. Oops. There we go. Anyways, thank you to everybody for tuning in. Thanks again, Jared. And we'll see everybody later.